How do you generally get paid? Is it like a lump sum, or are you like, paid incrementally?
So how do you get paid? So price modeling for contract work can actually happen in a number of different ways. So it'll depend on the company and the artist. Figure out what works for the two of you. It is a negotiation. Any contract work, it is a negotiation. You can ask for things. Don't be too scared of doing that. So what works best for the two of you? Uh, so for an indie developer, one of the best things you can hope for is just lump sum payment for a given contract. Boom. I am hiring you to do the soundtrack for this game, and when you are done that soundtrack and it has been approved, I pay you X amount. Makes it beautifully simple. Beautifully simple. If you do it really, really fast, good on you. If you do it really, really slow, that's on you. I don't know your process. You figure that out. Here's what I need. Here's the amount of money I have. There you go. Can you make it work? However, you make it work, that's your thing. Uh, that I think is the easiest way of doing it. Now, one little tweak on that is, of course, it sucks to have to wait to have everything finished before you get any money. So you may have a proportioned out lump sum. So you might do what would be like a milestone system. So it's like, okay, you're doing the whole soundtrack. Well, after the first three songs, you get this amount, and then the next three, you get this amount. And so as you hit those milestones, you get some of the money rather than all of it right at the end. For simple contracts, maybe you get like half up front and half on completion, whatever it is. Generally, if you're completely new, unless you've got like an obvious work history in the industry, they may be reticent to offer an upfront uh, lump sum uh, portion of the contract, because are they just handing you money and then you disappear? If you hire people on contract enough, it will happen to you. So I have paid a number of contracts where I paid upfront portion of the money and then they buggered off and I never got anything usable out of it. So good fun. I guess that's the warning of using contract work is, yeah, you do really want to have some kind of protection system there to make sure either side of the contract is getting what they need out of it, right? An alternate form of payment would be a set price for deliverables, so a piecework approach. So I need you to do um, art for monsters or characters or something. So what I'm going to do is every frame or every character you get done, whatever it is, I pay you X dollars per thing you do. There you go. So you submitted one character, you get X dollars for that character. You send me three characters, you get three characters worth of money. Boom, and you just pay per piece of work that's done. So that's another common contract model. And then the other common system would be hourly work. So you're hired on contract, you have a set contract either by a finite date or by a finite task. So you need to do X amount of work, and the contract lasts until you finish that work, or there's some forfeiture clause. It's not done by 3 years, then grr, you bum, and I cancel the contract, or whatever it is. Within those, you would define a limit to the number of hours of work you would do in a given time frame. So it's like you may work, 12 to 20 hours a week, and you will be paid X number of dollars per hour of work. So you'll then budget out your time. You'll track your time use. You then submit your paperwork saying I worked this many hours within this week or 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is for your payment period, and then you get paid based on those number of hours of work. those are all possible. Those are all fairly common. It'll depend on what the contract is, what works for you, what works for the company. There's negotiation. Don't worry about asking questions. You need to ask questions. What does that mean? Get that clarified to you. If you're not comfortable with what a contract means, talk it out. Ask for clarification. Yeah, and there can be some flexibility. What payment terms make sense for you? Do you need it every 2 weeks, every month? Do you need it on milestones? What works? Those are for negotiation. So, yeah, those are basically your payment models.
Awesome. So, we had a question with royalties on certain items. If you say make music for a game, um, do you I don't know how to ask this. If you make music for a game, right, and it gets put into like a soundtrack and it's sold separately, like you see on Steam sometimes. Does that artist get royalties, or is what they get paid for what they get paid for, and that's that after that?
So fair enough. The one payment model I didn't mention would be royalties. So royalties are interesting subject. So it would be great, obviously, if you did a soundtrack and put it in a game, and hey, you'll get X percentage of sales for doing that, and then the game takes off, and oh, it turns out it's the new Among Us, or the next Fortnite, and oh, look, you're a billionaire because you made some songs. Pretty unlikely. So, really, when you're paid on a royalty, you're paid like a percentage of sales. So the product gets made, goes on market. When it sells, some of that money is owed to you. Now, there can be certain expenses that get deducted off of those sales before the sales were calculated for royalties, or not. It again totally depends on your contract. But the whole point of royalties is you get paid based on the success of the project. Now, the problem is the chance of a project becoming a smash hit are absolutely slim. Slim, to be polite about it. The more likely they are to be a smash hit, the more likely it's a big company that's well established and can afford salary people instead of paying people royalties, right? Royalties are generally going to be seen more from small developers, amateurs, people that probably haven't done a game before, which, let's face it, if you haven't done a game before, there's a very good chance the game you make is not going to be a giant success. Most games don't really make much money. That's a sad truth to the industry, but most indie projects make very, very little money. And so if you're counting on a percentage of very little money, you're talking about very, very little money. So you want to be pretty aware of that risk. Now, the biggest risk of all is that it might not pay anything ever, because actually a lot of games don't ever get released. So what if you sign on to get royalties? Maybe they're amazing, like, oh man, I'll do the soundtrack and I'll get a quarter of all the money that this game ever makes. That would be amazing. If it was Fortnite, I would get $250 million a month. Amazing. Not likely to happen. The truth is, if the game never releases, you will never get paid anything for any of the work you have ever done. There you go. That's not a particularly great value proposition to me. So you need to know that games might not even be released, let alone be successful. So Workers need to protect themselves. So royalties generally are actually seen in the industry as like a sign that the person doesn't know what they're doing. They don't have any money. They don't know how to budget. They don't. They haven't like bothered saving up to try and make this work. So it's a real sign of sort of that rank amateur level of like, yikes, this is not a legit project. So that's generally what most people in industry see that as. Not saying it can't work, but it definitely does have a stigma, and it has that stigma for a reason. So it can work, but you need to do your homework and really consider what you're looking at. Now, an important thing is when you're doing any kind of contract is that you want to have some protection to get some value out of what you did. If you're getting paid, hey, you got a paycheck. There you go. Rent's paid, right? But other things you want to consider are how can you use the work that you did? Can you show it in your portfolio? If a game hasn't been released, generally a studio won't want you to show it at all. Before it's released, it's a secret. Like, you don't want to spoil the surprises, right? Like, oh, this is the music for character X's death. Well, maybe that's important to the storyline. You can't just do that. So, here's the image of the big bad boss. Like, God, no, you can't do that. So, whenever you're doing contract work, like, you have to understand that they're not going to want you to show most stuff before release. So that unfortunately means, what if the game never releases? You can never show any of it. So you need to try and make sure there's some protection clauses in there. So, hey, if it's this date and you haven't released it, I can show the work. You need to protect yourself, be able to build up your portfolio, be able to become that industry professional you want to be. So there's stuff like that you can try and protect yourself from, that can be a real problem with contract work. So make sure you can get something that you can show and at least advance yourself publicly. Obviously the experience of doing the work is a big help to you, but you also want to be able to show that you did the work. Nothing beats having an actual published credit for growing your resume. You need to have some way of showing that. So be aware of that.